I sense you, my master. Faint, weak.
Your senses betray you, as you betrayed me.
After all that's happened, still you live. You are difficult to kill.
For one as limited as you, perhaps. To have fallen so far and learned nothing, that is your failing.
The failure is yours. No longer do your whispers crawl within my skull. No longer do I suffer beneath teachings that weaken us. And now you run in search of the Jedi. They are all dead, save one, and one broken Jedi cannot stop the darkness that is to come.
In a recent video about Darth Nihilus, we told the story of one of the most infamous of the old Sith Lords, a walking wound in the Force powerful enough to consume entire planets. But Nihilus was not the only Sith Lord running around the galaxy during the Dark Wars. He was, for a time, allied with another powerful Sith Lord, Darth Sion, the Lord of Pain. When Nihilus was an unstoppable force, Sion was an immovable object, a man who simply refused to die. He had suffered countless fatal wounds in his lifetime, and his flesh was unrecognizable with all its scars. But he held his body together through the sheer force of his fury. In our opinion, he's actually the cooler and better written of the two Sith Lords, and in this video we'll be telling his story. "3,951 years before the Battle of Yavin during the Dark Wars, the crew of the Republic cruiser Harbinger boarded a Sith warship they encountered on the fringes of unknown space. The ship, it seemed, was empty, or almost empty, rather. A single corpse was found on board, the corpse of a Sith Lord, which Republic soldiers took to their ship's medical bay to study. The doctors ran a quick scan on the body and were horrified by what they discovered. The Sith Lord's flesh was cracked and grey, covered with innumerable burns and scars. His bones appeared to have been shattered, not broken but shattered thousands of times, and then forced back together over and over again. He had suffered so many fatal wounds that the doctors were unable to determine what had actually killed him. But what really horrified them was their determination that all of the Sith Lord's countless injuries had taken place before his death. Before he died, they surmised, he must have been in constant pain. Let's take a few steps back. A full 45 years before the Dark Wars, during the Great Sith War, a man named Sion declared allegiance to Exar Kun, who had set out to bring the galaxy under the rule of a new Sith Empire. He may once have been a Jedi, one of many young apprentices who rose up and butchered their masters on Kun's command one fateful day, causing chaos within the Jedi Order and sparking the Great Sith War. Whether or not this was true, Sion hated the Jedi from the outset and sought battle with them. As a member of the Brotherhood of the Sith, Sion chose to become a Sith Marauder. Marauders focused almost entirely on combat, supplementing their physical strength with force-enhanced battle rage. Sion chose this path and a spot on the front lines of the Great Sith War for one simple reason. He sought to die. We don't know why, but he had lost all desire for life and desired to go down in a blaze of glory fighting a Jedi. But there was a small problem with this plan. He kept surviving. As it turned out, he was quite good at killing Jedi, and while he routinely suffered severe injuries in battles, he always recovered from them. He developed a great tolerance for pain, and he started believing he was immortal, a force for the dark side that no Jedi could hope to stop. However, as the Republic emerged victorious from the Great Sith War, a Jedi finally struck Sion down. But Sion still didn't die. He'd become so convinced of the idea that he was immortal that he refused the possibility of death. Even as he was consumed by terrible pain, he rose up and slew his would-be killer. Sion, who had formerly been eager to die, had become determined to live forever, presumably to keep killing Jedi. He discovered that, through the sheer force of anger and hate, he could hold his body together despite the fatal wound he had endured. This caused him to suffer from intense pain for every moment of the rest of his life, but Sion considered this an acceptable price to pay for immortality. Indeed, his constant pain became a source of strength, increasing his eternal fury. Over time, he even came to define himself by his suffering, deeming himself the Lord of Pain. The decades after the Great Sith War were some of the most turbulent in galactic history. 30 years after the fall of Exar Kun, the Mandalorians launched a massive assault on the Republic, nearly bringing the entire galaxy to its knees. Within months of the Mandalorian War's end, they were followed up by the Jedi Civil War, in which a Sith Empire led by Revan and Malak attempted to do the exact same thing. Darth Sion fought in both of these wars, killing Jedi wherever he could. He received more fatal wounds over the course of these decades, but they didn't even slow him down. After a redeemed Revan defeated Malak at the end of the Jedi Civil War, their Sith Empire imploded. Sion was on Korriban when the Sith in the Academy turned on each other, doing the Jedi's work for them by slaughtering their own kind. Obviously, Sion survived this bloodbath and he left Korriban in disgust, infuriated by what he saw as the weakness of Revan and his fellow Sith. It was shortly after the abandonment of Korriban that Sion was found by Darth Traya. She recruited him and Darth Nihilus to be her apprentices, and together they formed the Sith Triumvirate. These three Sith Lords gathered the tattered remnants of Revan's Sith at the Traya Academy on Malachor 5, where they planned the destruction of the Jedi Order. Under Traya, Sion endured constant torment and came to master his natural skill of being too angry to die, which he put to use against the Jedi. Together with the other members of the Triumvirate, Sion formed an order of Sith assassins. Like Darth Nihilus, Sion's contemporary, these assassins fed on the Force within their targets, drawing on it to increase their power and track their enemies. These assassins became quite good at killing, as they also learned to cloak themselves in the Force, which rendered them invisible until they were ready to strike. Sion was largely the one who oversaw the assassins, and he frequently went out with them to kill Jedi himself. While Nihilus roamed the Outer Rim hunting for groups of Jedi, Sion tracked down individual targets, whom he and his assassins cornered and killed. No Jedi survived an encounter with Darth Sion, not even those who managed to strike him down. But over time, there arose a problem that threatened the stability of the Sith Triumvirate. They were running out of Jedi to kill. After Darth Nihilus consumed the planet Katar, there were believed to be no Jedi left in the known galaxy. With their shared mission complete, Sion and Nihilus turned against Darth Traya, confronting her and stripping her of the Force. The two then went their separate ways, believing they had killed Traya, but this wasn't the case. She survived, and in the guise of Kreia, she fled Malachor and sought out Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile. Kreia wasn't the only one looking for Surik, however. Sion believed her to be the last of the Jedi, and so he too sought her out. He tracked her to the Republic warship Harbinger and feigned death to allow the Republic to capture his ship. As the Republic soldiers brought him to the medbay, dozens of cloaked Sith assassins snuck onto the Harbinger, hiding until the time was right. That time came when Kreia arrived in the Ebon Hawk and snuck Mitra Surik off the Harbinger, causing Sion to break the ruse early and attack the warship's crew. He and his assassins took over the Harbinger and used the vessel to fire on the Ebon Hawk, but the freighter escaped, albeit with serious damage. The Ebon Hawk limped to an asteroid mining station near Paragus 2 for repairs, and in time, Sion followed. The Harbinger arrived at the Paragus facility as Surik and Kreia together with Aton Rand were trying to escape. The three of them opted to go through the Harbinger to get to the Ebon Hawk, which was inaccessible from their part of the station. As they worked their way through the warship, Sion confronted them. Kreia opted to hold Sion off while Aton and Mitra escaped, and she distracted her former student, hiding in the shadows to taunt him. But she underestimated Sion's perception, and as she tried to sneak up on him, the vengeful Sith Lord spun around and cut off her left hand. Kreia managed to escape the encounter, however, and she, Surik, and Aton managed to get to the Ebon Hawk and leave the Paragus station. Sion pursued them aboard the Harbinger, trying to shoot their ship down, but his shot struck the fuel-rich asteroids of the Paragus belt instead. The asteroids exploded, sparking a chain reaction that destroyed Paragus 2 entirely. To absolutely nobody's surprise, Sion survived the destruction of Paragus, continuing to pursue Mitra Surik and her companions. They were seeking out the last members of the Jedi Council, 4 Jedi Masters who had escaped the Purge. But 2 could play at that game, and it was Darth Sion and his assassins who got to Lona Vash, one of the 4 Masters, first. Sion captured Vash on Korriban and imprisoned her in the ruins of the Sith Academy, using her to draw Surik to the planet. When the exile arrived on Korriban, Sion killed Vash and then battled the exile, who managed to hold him off for long enough to escape. Sion spent the next few days dwelling on his failure and on Mitra Surik. He realized that he found her beautiful, something that enraged him as he saw it as weakness. Conflicted, he returned to the Trace Academy to plan his next move. Before he moved against Surik again, however, Kreia returned to Malachor, having reclaimed the mantle of Darth Traya. Sion tried to kill her, but she easily subdued him. Reluctantly, Sion agreed to serve Traya once more. Trey commanded him to bring her the exile, unharmed, when she pursued her to Malachor. She revealed that she planned to break Surik, as she had once broken Sion, something that the Sith Lord quietly took issue with. As predicted, Mitra Surik came to Malachor 5, and when she did, Darth Sion was there to confront her. He demanded she leave before Traya destroyed her, but Surik refused, and the two began one last battle. Again and again, Surik struck Sion down, and again, Sion got right back up. He refused to let her pass, determined to keep Traya from breaking her, but he proved unable to overcome the exile despite his best efforts. Surik, on the other hand, was able to erode Sion's will. She convinced him of the futility of his efforts and revealed why she was able to defeat him. Surik had learned to live without the Force, while Sion had become dependent on it, relying on it simply to live. But Sion had nothing to live for. His quest to wipe out the Jedi had proved futile, and at this point, he was just living for the sake of living, at the cost of terrible pain. Sion realized there was a truth in her words. Death wasn't so a terrible thing, he realized, and the Lord of Pain finally allowed himself to die.
I'm glad to leave this place, at last.
In Knights of the Old Republic 2, the source of Sion's story, Darth Sion, like Darth Nihilus, served to illustrate the point that the extreme powers granted by the Force were not power at all, but weakness. We've discussed that outlook in our video on Nihilus, so we're not going to restate it here, and Sion actually has another rhetorical purpose as well. Darth Sion displays the futility and fruitlessness of the dark side, the ultimate trap of the Sith. The Sith were obsessed with cheating death. Many Sith Lords sought the secrets of immortality, and some, like Sion, did manage to find techniques to keep them alive forever. But as Sion realized at the end of his own life, while he had the power to live forever, he had nothing to live forever for. Immortality was a hollow and pointless goal, such that Sion ultimately chose to abandon it to allow himself to die. The dark side is always about wanting more, about trying to be the most powerful, but at the end of the day, that power means nothing if there's nothing to use it for. By the time most Sith reached the apex of their power, they had no purpose in life, as in their pursuit of selfish goals, they no longer cared about anything else. So that's the story of Darth Sion, the Scottish Sith Lord who was literally too angry to die. But what do you think? Who do you think was cooler, Sion or Nihilus? Let us know your choice in the comment section below. And just before you click off to the next suggested video, guys, I have a massive announcement to make. Our revitalized Geetsly's gaming network is now up and running. It's running on a beautiful map. The staff team have worked really hard on it, and I'm glad to have put my full trust into them. So make sure you guys check that out. All the necessary information for that is in the description below. And if you want to check out our all-new history channel, The Braved, where we take a look at all the badasses of history, that's in the description too, as well as our Relax Jack music channel, our Geetsly's Discord, and our Patreon. Anyways, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.